Hi, this is Zoe from The Whisper Tree, and in this video I felt very drawn to talking about the magic and the mystery of the moon and her phases, her cycle, and how this impacts on us energetically. So first of all, I don't know how much you are aware, but the moon is known as a satellite because it circles the Earth. It influences the motion of the Earth, the tides of the Earth, and the orbit of the Earth. Now, it's been scientifically proven, although many of us don't need the proof, it's just a kind of inner knowing, but science has managed to prove just how the moon and her cycle and her energy impacts on us humans as far as making decisions, our behaviour and our spiritual health is concerned. And they've been proving this by kind of proving a correlation between the full moon and the new moon and the amount of violent crime and accidents and kind of reported illnesses in hospitals that there are, as in during these phases of the moon, the full moon and the new moon, there are more. Basically, this gets heightened. So by, whether we're conscious and aware of the moon and her energy and the way it impacts us, we are, if we're not at all aware, we will be getting unconsciously impacted. If we are aware, then obviously the greater the impact in a way. And I think it is a good thing, a very good thing to be aware and conscious and connected to the moon and her energies, because by kind of realigning your work, if you are in a fortunate situation that you work for yourself and you can realign your workload according to the energy of the moon and the cycles of the moon, and also your social engagements, if you can plan that around that. As you'll see as we go more into detail of the moon phases, this can be hugely beneficial to you. It's a really good thing to be aware of and to work with. Now, the other thing I'm going to be talking about is the menstruation cycle of a woman, because this is very closely linked to the moon cycle, or can be. Not so much nowadays, because obviously we have electricity, so we get affected differently. So we are often out of sync with the moon cycles, but traditionally and in ancient times, women were very in sync with the moon cycles. So it's really interesting to be aware of this and how it can affect us potentially even more so. And if we think the female cycle is around 28 days, as is the lunar cycle, which is yet another proof, tangible proof, that we could be very connected in this way. And naturally we would be, as I said, but it's just the way we lead, society dictates, and the way we live kind of gets us out of sync with these natural rhythms. So in terms of the moon, when we're thinking of the full moon, this is when the moon is at its brightest, its lightest. We have most light on the planet. We're full of energy. We're getting things done. When it's a new moon, this is when the darkest side of the moon faces us. And so this is when the menstruation period is, so we have less energy. And so these are the two things that the main sort of aspects of the moon to be aware of. So I'm now going to go into the 4 phases of the moon. There are 4 phases to the lunar cycle. So, and I'm going to link these in with the seasons as well, because this helps us to gain a deeper understanding of the moon cycle. So we have the first phase, which is called the spring phase. This is a new moon phase. And this is when we menstruate. In terms of menstruation, this is then. Then we have the summer phase, which is the full moon, which, we have the most light. And this is when we're ovulating. We have the energy, we have the creativity. Then we go on to the autumn phase, which, depending on what we've sown in the summer phase, is how we experience the autumn phase. So it's when we're starting to think about, what's been a success, what hasn't, where our life's going, all those sorts of thoughts and feelings. And then we enter into the winter phase, which is when we have the least amount of light. We're thinking about what we need to let go of. It's that period leading up to the menstruation, of the new moon, the new moon phase again. So this is in a nutshell how the lunar cycle, the moon phases work. But we're not only getting impacted by the moon and the energies, but we're also getting impacted by different kind of highly charged astrological and stellar activations. So, you know, we have the fact that the moon transits through the 12 zodiac signs, and that we're pulling in aspects of those signs each time that the moon transits through them. And I feel that the extent of the impact depends very much on the individual and what they have to release. So if it is an aspect that they are struggling with, that they have to release, then they will get more impacted. This is what I feel. We also have solar and lunar eclipses, which will bring its own energy into the mix. And we have supermoons during the year, which is when the moon's really full and bright because it's at its closest to the earth. So obviously energetically, we will be getting really, really impacted at those times. We've also got the global grid matrix, which is the energy system that weaves into our systems, into each and every one of us, into the planet, up into the solar systems as well. And obviously we've got things like diet, hormones, all these things will be having their impact and influence on our body, on our physical body, on our behaviours, etc. So it's huge. We get impacted by a lot of energy, by a lot of different factors. And it is difficult to see clearly sometimes through all of this. But I do feel that since I've become very aware and conscious of the moon and her energies and the way this can potentially impact us, I feel this is a really good starting point already to be becoming more aware of how we're getting impacted energetically. I mean, I know for one that I'm, over the full moon, I never sleep. I have loads of energy. I'm waking up at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, getting up, doing a load of work. So I know that from a sensitivity point of view, I'm very connected to the moon and very impacted by those energies. So, and it's also worth remembering that during the full moon and the new moons, there's a lot of spiritual activity that goes on. So things are getting amplified, things that, that need to come up into our consciousness, that we become aware of them, so that we can release them. This is all going on emotionally, everything's amplified. So it's good, just even if we're conscious at that level, this will really, really help us. So let's go into more detail over these 4 phases of the moon. And also, as you'll find out, women's menstruation cycle have also 4 phases which tie in very closely. So the first phase is the spring phase, as I've mentioned before. This is the new moon phase. We're moving into that new moon, working our way up to it. This is when we're menstruating. So it's very much this kind of idea of getting hold of the old blood, getting rid of the old blood, getting rid of the old stuff that no longer serves us, things that have been blocking us so that we cannot move forward, have to go. They're coming up into our consciousness so that we clear them and let them go. Now, I always feel it's not a good idea to rush into things, because we'll be feeling really anxious and nervous. Emotionally, things will be coming up for us. We won't have a lot of energy and we'll be finding things a bit tougher. But I wouldn't rush into anything straight away. It is signifying that things are coming up to look at or clear, but not necessarily get rid of. It's just maybe looking at it in a different way. So when we're in this new moon phase, just sit tight. It's about sitting with those emotions, sitting with what the consciousness brings up for us, so that we can move into a new way of being, a new way of seeing clearly. And again, as I said earlier, there is a lot of spiritual activity that occurs around this time. This is a time when we don't have a lot of energy, but we want to be just conserving our energy and just resting as much as possible, because we're more psychically linked at this point in time, connecting with the higher selves. We'll be getting more prophetic dreams, we'll be getting in messages from higher guidance, having visions. So if we are open, so we need to rest during this period. And traditionally, this is what the ancients and tribal women would be doing, or probably still are doing. They'd have these moon lodges or red tents where they'd go to, because they were so in sync with the moon cycle and so in sync with each other. They'd all be menstruating at the same time. So they'd remove themselves into these moon lodges where they'd have prophetic dreams, visions. The men and the elders would be kind of beavering away, picking up the chores that they'd be doing. But it was all good because they really valued and honoured this. The whole community did, because the women were so psychically linked. And then after their period in the moon lodge, they'd come back out and feed back to the rest of the community as to where to set up camp, where the buffalo were. They'd know all that, they'd see into all that. So it was a very special time. It was a very honoured time for women. And some believe that all this kind of physical stuff like the cramping, it's just reminders of us to take it easy, to rest up, and and just not do a lot, really, just honor that time. So as the new moon starts to rise in the sky, a new way of being would come about. New opportunities would arise in a more natural way. So this would bring us into the full moon phase, the summer phase, where the moon is at its brightest, there is the most light in the sky, and we'll be getting impacted by this. This is the ovulation period, the summer period, so we'll have this huge boost of energy, and you'll find that over the full moon. And this is a time to get projects done. This is a time to get your creative juices flowing. It's ovulation, it's creation. And if you can, plan your work accordingly. Take on extra work at this time. This is the time to be doing it, not in the new moon phase. So whereas a new moon is very much about inaction and resting and introspection, the full moon is the opposite. So it's about taking action. It's about having those social engagements. This is a time when you're going to be feeling attractive. You're going to, your pheromones are bubbling up to the surface, and you want to be going out and socializing. So social engagement's very good over the full moon period. And also going back to this kind of the violent crimes and the accidents, if you think about it, we suddenly have all this extra energy and we're getting thrown about by the energy. If we're not channeling it, all the mischief can happen. So if you've got kids, get them to be doing a project. If it's you, think of something you can do where you can really channel through that energy and get extra stuff done around the house. And I think before I understood these phases, this would, in the autumn phase, after this period of full moon, we're coming to the autumn phase, and this is when we reflect, we reap what we sow, what we've sown in the summer period. And I know for a fact that I would often feel frustrated, and because X, Y, and Z hadn't been done around the house, hadn't been done in the garden, I'd be thinking, oh, where's my life going? Because I hadn't capitalized on this extra boost of energy in the summer period. And this is what the autumn period is about, is reflecting over what we've done. So if we've managed to really channel this energy and really get stuff done, then you're going to be feeling good about it. But if you haven't managed to, you're going to be feeling very frustrated. And I know as a woman, that's how I'd be feeling. And then we come into the winter period. So this is a time for introspection. It's when we're starting to get the least amount of light. We don't have a lot of energy. It's a time just coming up to the menstruation period. So it's PMS, PMT, when it's almost like we're subconsciously pushing people away because we need to make that space for that period of introspection. And this is when we start to reflect on what we've achieved, but also what's not working for us, and we're getting ready to let go. We're getting ready to let go with the new moon. The new moon brings in new opportunities, but in order to really capitalize on that, we have to let go of the things that are no longer serving us. And in order to know and understand that, we have to have that period of reflection, that introspection. And as I said, we will probably feel like we're pushing people away in order to get that insight. So those are the 4 periods. So then obviously after that winter period, we come back into the spring, and it's the new moon, new beginnings, menstruation, getting rid of the old, bringing the new. So with those 4 phases, if we learn to be really live consciously with it and be aware of it, and it wouldn't take much, you could really start to plan your work around it, taking on extra work, as I mentioned, over the full moon, and really honouring ourselves, resting up with the new moon, because that's when we have the least amount of energy. you know, and it's just kind of knowing ourselves and aligning ourselves with these energies, you know, because we are divine beings. This is all part of a process that's much bigger than us. But as I said, if we learn to align ourselves with at least the moon phases, then being aware of the different zodiacal signs and the super moons and things like that, you'll really start to understand your energy and the influxes and what's going on for you, but knowing that other stuff is as well, and being aware of that. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please don't forget to like, comment and share, because it always helps me to get my message out to those who need it. Blessings from the Whisper Tree. Bye.